Everybody. I wanted to make a video today about my elevated sideline camera system that I use. I usually get one or two questions every time I have a game that I'm recording, whether my son or my daughter. People ask about it, so I thought I would make a video. Maybe it'll help some DIY people out there. A lot of the different components that I used are things that you can find on two main websites. One is called cameraendzone.com and the other one is wonderpole.com. So I'm just going to go through this stuff real quick. This is what I used up until the end of the current season, and I've started swapping some things out, but I wanted to get an overview of what I did use and maybe discuss some pros and cons and why I'm looking at doing things differently. So one of the first things is the video camera itself. It's a Panasonic HC-V77. It would be really cool to tell you that I did a lot of research and I picked this camera because it was the ideal thing, but in reality it was just the video camera that I had, and it actually worked out pretty well for the majority of the season. The things that were nice features on this camera that I was fortunate to have, it's got hybrid optical image stabilization, so it can deal with a little bit of shake pretty well. And it also has a second kind of image stabilization where if you're shooting just a little bit off kilter, you're not exactly level, it's got sensors in that and it can do a small amount of correction. The other thing that was useful about this camera, you see it's got a little Wi-Fi tag on there. This camera is remotely controllable from an iPad or an Android phone via an app, and the app allows you to do two things. It serves as a remote monitor, and it also lets you control the zoom and start-stop record functions. So that was handy for me to get started with because it was a way to wirelessly broadcast what I was recording onto my iPad and see what I'm doing from there. So this whole rig goes up about 20 feet, so that was kind of an important feature. Coming down from or above the camera, we'll say, this was a little bit of a rain shield slash stun shield that I made towards the end of the season. Originally I had the top of it coated with aluminum because I noticed that the camera was getting extremely warm on sunny days way up there with no shade or anything. I kind of did away with that. This works okay as long as it isn't real windy. It's pretty tippy. I think I'm just going to go with a bag later. I've seen the bags that you can actually buy, or imagining you can make one pretty inexpensively, but that's what this is here for, is protection from the sun and the rain. Coming down from the camera, this is a standard monopod ball mount. I use the ball mount on this setup because the tilt mechanism on the remote pan tilt head that we'll talk about next, it tilts plus or minus 15 degrees, and I found that down angle was not sufficient to be able to shoot at the distance from the sideline that I'm typically at. So what I do is I crank, and you kind of, a little hard to see, and put this off. I crank this all the way up because I'm not shooting anything in the air, I'm shooting down on a field. And then I use the ball mount to basically level it out. And then I've got 30 degrees of down angle, which in most cases is enough. And if it's not enough, I can make adjustment and I can adjust it down even further. One of the drawbacks of using a ball mount is that it's very difficult to get a consistent lineup as far as left to right, and it may either be tilted too far this way, or another thing that may happen is it may be kind of rotated off center, and then what happens is as you start to maneuver the control, you'll get weird angles and stuff. So but it was the best thing that I had at the time, and I was able to use what I had. So coming down, I've already talked about this. This is a Bezcore remote pan tilt head. This is a fairly inexpensive unit, and it does have remote control capability. It's wired. I've got a long extension wire for it. I'm not getting it out for this video. You get the point. Wire plugs in on the back. You set it to manual control, and once you pop this on, down here is a little controller, and I can go, you can see it slowly panning. Left, right. Down and up. Emphasis on the slowly part. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Coming down, so this is a telescoping fiberglass pole made by it's a company called Wonder Pole. I chose fiberglass for two reasons. One, of the available composite materials, it's relatively affordable. The second reason was because fiberglass is non-conductive, so if you do have fears of being a lightning rod, it's a better choice. Coming down, so I already kind of talked about the fact that I use an iPad as a monitor. There are a number of things that make up the monitoring system. The first is the iPad itself with the app. The second, this hood. This was actually a sunshade hood, this thing. It was actually a hood that was designed to hold an iPad, but on a specific drone controller. And on the back, you can kind of see it's got some brackets that did not work well with my situation, so I had to cut them. But otherwise, I was actually really happy with the shade. You can leave your iPad in it. What I do to make it easy and so it stays in, I've got a little strip of Velcro behind this right here, so it's really secure. And I did that because originally this iPad, this holder, which is this part, it held the iPad really tight. But when I started using the sunshade, these things had to grip the sunshade instead of the iPad. So I wasn't really convinced that this would be secure, so I put some Velcro in there. So this is a standard camera mount holder for an iPad. You can find them online pretty easily. Coming down from that unit, so this is a magic arm. It's basically, you know, a articulating arm that's got two ball joints on it, so you can kind of position the top and the bottom. It worked pretty good most of the season. Towards the end of the season, it seemed like these ball joints were not holding tight, and that did kind of, things would go off kilter, and it was kind of pain in the butt. So I'm definitely looking at a better solution for that. The magic arm goes into this claw gripper, and then this whole assembly we'll talk about here. But this aluminum rod was something that I put into this arm, grabs it, and then it keeps everything at a good height. So when I started shooting at the beginning of the season, it quickly became pretty apparent to me that this remote pan tilt head, the tilt, generally speaking, is fast enough. The pan is not fast enough to keep up with a game, even zoomed out kind of far, you know, no zoom. So I built basically these arms, and they attach to the telescoping fiberglass rod. All this is a 4-way PVC sanitary tee. These are two 60-degree arms, and then a length of 1.5-inch PVC, and then capped off and painted. I would not recommend painting PVC. I really tried different types, different brands of paint. I was never really able to find something that stuck really well. And when it doesn't stick to the PVC, it does get all over the place and stick to other things like bags that you may be carrying things in. So a little point of advice, I wouldn't bother painting PVC. So this sanitary tee, it was a 1.5-inch, or yeah, 1.5-inch sanitary tee. I would recommend that if you do get this Wonder Pole and you're planning on doing any kind of attachment in this second section, that you go ahead and get a 2-inch. I chose the 1.5 because the next size down pole slides pretty easily in a 2-inch pipe, so I was a little concerned that 2 inches would be too big. But once I kind of changed up how I was doing things, 1.5 inches definitely wasn't big enough. And the reason is because when I cut this in half, I really felt like I had to overly crank how tight the clamp was to hold these in place. So I ended up buying a rubber coupling that you use, like when you join PVC to ABS. You're not supposed to directly join those two things. You're supposed to do it with a rubber coupling that then uses a mechanical clamp. So I took that coupling and kind of cut it apart, and I used part of the rubber coupling, you can see it right here, to kind of create a padding and a little bit of grip. And once I did that, what would happen was that there only a small amount of this was actually making contact with the pole, so it wasn't the greatest setup. When you're building this, just a couple of things I noticed if you don't work a lot with PVC. There are these marks that are on like the sanitary tee to the 60-degree angle, and this just helps you get a consistent lineup between like left and right halves. So beyond the fact that I can use these arms and the whole thing turns pretty easily, the other thing that it did is that when you've got this fully extended, it feels secure, but you know, it's pretty high up and you've got people around, and now I've got something that, in addition to, I hold on to it and I have a very good good feeling about how safe this is when I can get a hold of this. And the other thing that it did was it gave me convenient places to put things, like this